Hello, and thank you for joining me on this episode of In the Trenches. Our guest today is a brand strategist and visibility coach. She happens to also be the author of the best-selling book, Get What You Want, and the host of the very popular podcast, The Influencer Podcast. But before we get into our episode, I want to remind y'all, please like, share, and subscribe. So, without any further ado, my friend, Julie Solomon. Julie, thank you so much for driving by. Stopping by, I guess I should say.
It's going to be fun.
We've been trying to get you on here for what now? Probably 3 months.
Yeah.
You're a busy lady.
It's been a few months. This year's, boom.
Well, you're very successful and your time is very valuable. And I was saying before we got on here how stoked I am to have you. And I know my guests and listeners will be paying close attention to hopefully everything we talk about, because your world is a mystery to me. And it's come from, and I say your world, you know, the brand coaching and brand deals and scaling your business and growth all through strategy I pay attention to all your posts and everything, and it's very eye-opening to me from where I came from. Mm-hmm. And I want to dive into so much, but I want my guests to know that we also know each other.
We do very, very well.
I had your amazing husband, Jonathan Sheck, on, oh my gosh, episode 4.
Yeah.
Which I might have been a little cringeworthy on how I was hosting or whatever I was
No, he
on
loved
that
it.
one.
Yeah, and that was like his first interview too for his tour with his show. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think you both kind of met each other.
Absolutely. You know very well, you went to college with my wife.
I did. She's one of my oldest, dearest friends. I was at your wedding.
Yep.
You have seen me through lots of versions of my own
life.
Yeah,
versions, exactly.
Versions, lots of different relationships and versions of my life. And now here we are, and kids and all the things.
Yeah, talking about vacations. But I guess I want to start out, one of the things with, I guess, me not being a real podcast host or learning to be one is I just get right into it.
I love it.
You know?
Yeah.
I knew you when you were coming up as a publicist.
Yeah.
And you were, I would say you were young and you were in your early 20s, I guess. And you were coming up through that system.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What made the shift? What caused that awareness, that light bulb?
Right.
To leave that you hadn't, you hadn't gotten where you want. You didn't climb the top of that mountain yet. You were just early getting it and carving to then stop. Yeah. In my opinion, that's what I would remember.
Yeah.
And to pioneer in some ways a new path that we're all learning from. So what would you say? How was that? How did that go?
We'll go down memory lane.
For a minute,
a lot of this you will remember, but so I went to the University of Tennessee with your wife, graduated in journalism, electronic media, minored in PR. Right after I graduated, 2007, I moved straight to New York, and I was able to get a job in PR at one of the top music PR agencies. And so I was low woman on the totem pole, but was working. I was a PR assistant for a woman who was one of the top music publicists. So her clients included Lenny Kravitz, Pink, Maroon 5, Def Leppard, the Bob Marley estate, Zoe Kravitz, Mekhi Phifer, just some acting, but mostly music. And so my time in New York, which wasn't long, I was there about 18 months, but I was entrusted into this kind of entertainment PR world. I learned a ton about tour press and traditional publicity, which what I mean by what that is, because it's important to the pivot, is your standard, magazines, television, that sort of thing. And then as the assistant, I really handled, all the tour press. So it's like, Lenny's playing in San Francisco. Let's call the San Francisco Chronicle, get a piece, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And I learned a lot. And I also got to, go on some tours, and I got to go to Fashion Week, and I just got to do a lot of fun and exciting things. Well, then my time in New York ended just because I could see that I didn't want to be there forever. Like I didn't want to raise a family there. It didn't make sense for me to stay on that path. I was looking in that office, and all of the women that I worked with were highly successful, but they were all in their mid to late 40s, not married, no kids. So I was like, I don't know if this is my path. So I came back to Nashville and then got a job working at basically a subsidiary of HarperCollins. So it was book publicity. So I went from music and entertainment, into in-house book. And what was great about that was that I had gotten the agency experience, and then now I was getting the corporate experience. Okay. And I know a lot of people love to poo-poo on corporate America because it's corporate America.
Yeah. I'm probably one of them.
Same, me too. But I learned a lot, right? Sure. And so instead of working with Lenny Kravitz, I was now pivoting and working with a lot of thought leaders and, life coaches and just kind of big names in that realm handling their books. But around this time as well, I was there for a couple of years. This was probably 2011, 2012 by this point. I was getting a divorce, which you remember my first husband that I met in college.
Yes.
And I was also looking, like my world was crumbling in a lot of ways. Personally, that was ending. And then I was looking around this corporate office, and I was in this windowless cubicle, and I was like, everyone here is fucking miserable. Like this cannot be the rest of my life.
Sure.
And at the same time, because I'd been there for a little while, I started to see the paychecks that were going out to the outsourced freelance PR people that I would pay for some of the bigger book campaigns. Oh. And I was like, okay, so this person's making $7,000 off of this campaign. This person's making $10,000, and I'm making $50K a year safely with my pension plan and my 401k. And so I just did a self-assessment, and I just said, look, I know this is a safer track for me, but I don't see as much value in things like health insurance and like quote unquote, like I would rather just pay my own health insurance and have the freedom to work where I want to work from anywhere, have the freedom to work on the projects that I want to work on, and just start setting a lifestyle that my business really supported, not the other way around.
Sure.
So I left that gig and joined forces with one of the women, her name's Beth Fromm, that I was actually using a lot for the freelancing projects.
Okay.
And that also gave me the freedom to get the crap out of town. Because by that point, I had met my now husband, Jonathan, and he was obviously living in LA. He's an actor. And so I was at this crossroads, and I had this opportunity to leave. And it was a great time for me because, it was on the heels of my divorce. It was on the heels of me leaving this company. And it was just this way to start fresh. So early 2013, I moved to LA. I'm now freelancing PR. HarperCollins becomes a client, and so now we're getting these campaigns. Get pregnant pretty quickly.
Yep.
And something that starts happening in LA is that I am barefoot and pregnant and don't know a lot of people. Okay. And I need to make friends.
Okay.
Because John's off filming in Bulgaria and Mexico and Canada.
He was gone.
He was gone a lot. And I was sitting in this big city. And of course, I knew people in LA. I had been there for work, when I would do, the music side of stuff, but it wasn't my town.
I think I was still living there.
Yes. Like you and Carrie had lived there. So like I had gone out to visit you guys and our friend Sarah Jo. So it's like, I felt comfortable in that space, but I didn't know anyone, and I wasn't going into an office every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, how was I meeting people? So I started to call up some friends of mine from New York, and I was like, y'all, I got to meet people. Like I got to move and shake and make this happen. And it was around that time that people started introducing me to other people that I started having this awareness of like, there's this thing called blogging that for whatever reason, it's like a rite of passage. Like if you're a young woman and you move to LA, you start a blog. It's just like something that all of them were doing. Yeah. And I started to notice like, this is interesting. There's all these bloggers and there's all these big events that cost money around bringing these bloggers together. And there's these people called YouTubers, and they're making money off of these YouTube ads to put makeup videos on YouTube. Like this is fascinating to me, right? And because of my background in PR at that point, I understood things like marketing and advertising and connection and talking to people. And so I started to kind of see around this time that there was this new, what we now call influencer marketing. There was this new industry that was starting, and LA was really, the top 1% of the top 1% of these people were there doing this. Yeah. It wasn't happening in cities like Nashville yet. No one was blogging here. No one was blogging in St. Louis. No one was blogging even in Miami. I mean, it was just New York and LA, and really LA. Yeah. And so I said, well, maybe this will be a way for me to meet some people. So I started a blog.
To meet people.
I was like, I want to connect. I want to be invited to these events. Okay. I need to get out of my house and talk to someone other than a baby. And so, I started a blog to make friends. And I was still doing the PR gig. Okay. But as I started going to these blogger events and meeting people, making connections, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this for free because it's a lot of work. And back then it was like, my blog was ridiculous. It was called A Publicist Spin on Motherhood. Like it was whatever, like it was ridiculous. And I was talking
early
about
early
comings, mom stuff. But I always had that perspective of PR, of like, how can I monetize this and make it bigger? So I started to pitch myself for contributing posts on mom and lifestyle related .coms like popsugar.com, mom.me. Hey, do you want content? Because I'm trying to become more visible and get my content out there. I would start to, go to these blogger events, and most of the bloggers would be sitting in the corner on their phones. And then you would have this brand representative standing right there that I know. It's like, okay, you're putting this event on. You clearly have a budget. I'm going to talk to you. And I started to just build relationships with these brands.
From the inside.
Yes, just from going to these events, from putting myself out there, from introducing myself. And I started to say like, hey, I've got a blog. Like, would you want to pay me to create content and to promote your products on my blog? Back in these days, it was a free-for-all. There was no system. There was no method to any of this. Sure. I was just taking what I had done for clients for years and now doing it for myself. Yeah. And so I started to quickly monetize my content. And after a few months, I had some friends of mine in LA who I'd gotten to know through this scene. They were coming to me and they were like, Julie, I don't mean to be rude, but you have like no followers and your content's not that great. And you're making more money than me. And I have 100,000 followers and my content's really good. And I was like, well, you don't know how to monetize. You don't know how to market yourself. You don't know how to talk to people.
Well, we need to figure that out.
Right.
I want to talk. There's going to be an element of this podcast where you're going to use me as your example.
But yes.
I just want to keep listening for a moment because this really sets up a lot of what I know of you. And I want every one of my listeners to know all this.
Yes. And so that moment then triggered something in me of like, hey, there's something here that these women, they don't need my mom tips. Mm-hmm. They don't need my life. They don't care about what I'm wearing. They need my PR and marketing skill set to support them. And around this same time, Ryan, this was probably, between the years of 2013 to 2015. Around this 2-year period, I also started to notice that the traditional landscape of PR was drastically changing. Budgets were being cut, they were being pivoted, they were being sent elsewhere. The way that music was distributed was changing. Mm-hmm. It used to be, the days where, an artist would create an album and then go on tour to support the album. When now the artists were going on the tour to make the album. And there really wasn't albums anymore. It was streaming and singles and, just so much of that landscape was changing. And also the media landscape was changing. Gone were the days where, you would see Lenny Kravitz on the cover of Spin magazine, which didn't even exist anymore, by the way. And that would be some type of visibility leverage for him to promote his album or his tour. Yeah. And so I started to notice like my work in PR is going to either drastically pivot or become somewhat absolute if I don't pivot with it. And I also knew that was going to be a big ship to turn around. And as you said, I hadn't gotten to the top of that mountain yet to really know how I was going to fit into that pivoting. But I could see it happening in real time. So after freelancing in PR at about 2016, I just decided I got to figure out what I'm doing. I can't keep side hustling this and freelancing this. And so I said, fuck it. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go all in on this influencer thing when it comes to education. I'm not even going to try to be an influencer myself anymore because that's not really where my expertise lies. I'm going to go into influencer education. And that was 2016. And I decided the way that I was going to do that at the time was I was going to create an online course. Okay. And so the first course that I ever created is called Pitch It Perfect. And it teaches content creators, influencers, YouTubers, anybody who generates consistent content and wants to monetize that content by partnering with brands. It teaches you how to pitch yourself so you can do that. And this is also important to note just how fast this industry was evolving. At the time, I was probably making about, I don't know, I'd say 100, 150K a year in my PR work, and then probably another 30 to 50,000 a year in brand deals that I was generating for myself. So about 200, 250,000. Within 9 months of creating that course, I made $1.3 million on just course sales.
But if you can keep that thought, so I can inject to make that that's a humongous challenge. Yeah. To set ahead, to forge ahead a course, outline it, break it down, production, shoot it, all that. That didn't come. That had to probably take some funds.
It did. And investment. But in the beginning, it was sloppy. Okay. Like it took me 3 months. I hired some dude off Etsy to make me a horrendous looking slide deck because I am not a graphic designer. You don't want me designing anything.
So you just did it though.
I just did it. But I had years of a methodology. So the step one was like, how do I take everything that I'm already naturally doing anyways and create a curriculum around it? And so that took me about 3 months of like, if somebody from point A to point Z, how do I get someone from I want to work with a brand to I'm signing a paid brand deal contract? And I knew how to do it because I had done it a million times for myself and a million times for other people at that point.
But 3 months to build that.
But 3 months to build that out. And then I did. I had to probably invest like a few $1,000 to hire, I knew what my zone of genius was and what it wasn't. Like, you don't want me building out a landing page. You don't want me like designing anything. But I did it very basic and very bare bones. And I remember the first launch that I did of that course where I invited people in. I had what's called a webinar, like a masterclass training, where I gave them a piece of kind of the pie. And then at the end, you sell them the course and they can buy it or not. I just wanted to make like $5,000. Like if I could just make $5,000. And I did. I made like $5,250. Okay. And then little by little, that set the trajectory of me doing these monthly launches of inviting people from social media, because that's where I would create content saying, you want to learn how to work with brands, you want to get paid to work with brands, come into this training, and I'm going to teach you some steps on how to do that. And then, if you like my teaching style and you feel this is right for you, at the end, I'm going to invite you to go deeper on those concepts. And you're going to have an opportunity to work with me behind a paywall. And if you want to do that, we can do that. And that's how it started. And then we can talk about, everything else from there. But that's
plan two.
Long-winded way of answering your question. And I thought the buildup of that was important to the story.
I love every bit of it. Because one of the things, before we get into the little things, do you feel the necessity that you faced in LA? You're kind of waving the flag, help.
Oh, yeah.
Allowed you emotionally or whatever to receive and then act on a whole new system that was coming in, the streaming and all the influencer. Because I say all that because I'm somewhere in that story where I feel like I am at the top of one mountain, and now I'm having to relearn, like where you were saying, we were talking about as a publicist, you didn't fully hit that.
Right.
So therefore you were able to shift a little bit more freely.
Right.
Me, I'm learning from you. I'm learning everything you say, and I don't even know how I'm doing with my world. Maybe you can shed some light on that. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I feel like my audience, or even my people like me, creatives,
right,
photographers, directors, podcast hosts, it's now or never. You better embrace it.
It is. And I think too, an important thing to note here is, like, you don't have to, like, I didn't have to reach the top of the PR mountain to have a successful career in the influencer marketing space. Just like you don't have to win a Grammy to have a successful music career. Yeah. You don't have to win an Oscar to have a successful acting career. And so I think for me, it was, I learned enough in that PR world that gave me enough experience, expertise, credibility, authority to then pivot and go, now how can that and all the years of me doing that be an asset over here? So it's about not feeling that you don't know enough, or you have to learn more, you have to be something that you already aren't. It's like, with what I have today, with what I've accomplished today, and in the past, with everything that's brought me to where I am today, how can I then take that next step forward? And it's kind of like, I love to use this analogy, and this is really a lot about branding, which we can talk about as well. But like, think about Amazon, for example, right? Like, what did Amazon used to sell? Books.
Oh yeah.
Now what do they sell?
Everything.
Any fucking thing that they want.
Everything.
Right? Why? Because they focused in and specialized on selling books first. They became a master at selling books first. It doesn't mean they were necessarily the best booksellers, because they still had Barnes & Noble and all these other people that were selling great books too, but they became so specialized in that system that then they were able to open and break a wall and then sell anything that they wanted. And so I think for me, it's like, I did find a specialization in pitching, even though I didn't become the biggest and best music publicist. I found this methodology within pitching that worked so well for these brand deals that I was then able to capitalize off that.
Yeah, you were inside. You were able to see what budgets people were spending. Everything it's
right.
Definitely the get it from the inside.
Yeah, and I think there is a vibe too, and you know this because you've lived there. And same thing with New York, because I've lived in both cities. There's an energy to cities like that suck you in. And it can be addictive and toxic, but also awesome in a lot of ways. Meaning, when you've got the top 1% of the top 1% of people around you trying to make it, like, you can't help but to be engulfed by that energy and inspired by that energy. Yeah. And I think that for me, Nashville, from a PR pitching perspective, it wasn't doing for me what I needed it to do. There was like this complacency that was happening.
I remember that.
And furthermore, I would have never gotten into the influencer marketing scene if I would have been here in Nashville as early as I did. I wouldn't have been able to see those things and to have the foresight to kind of know what was coming before the rest of the country did. Yeah. Because I was in the nucleus of it. And there is something to be said about that as well. But I did have to have a strategy and what I also uniquely brought to that invitation to pop off the way that my work was able to pop off at the time. And that was the thing. Back in 2016, no one was doing that. No one had a course on brand deals. No one had courses. No one was really doing podcasts. You got your Dave Ramsey's, but it's like no one was doing any of that. But you would start to see it happening in LA, and you were like, it expanded my understanding of what was possible that I don't think I would have gotten if I would have stayed here. Because
you're an advocate of movement.
Yes.
Right? I mean, but even being movement, meaning in how you present yourself to your followers,
Yeah.
There is a point when you can. Did you ever feel like, I run into this when I start to post too much or too little? I feel like I'm being too selly, too cringy, or whatever. And am I in my own head? And I just got to get over
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are just like me who damn it, man. Like I have photos for days and days. I can post 5 photos a day all year long.
Yeah.
And I just don't half the time because I'm worried that I'm going to come across too silly or whatever. And I feel like I'm always worried about what other people are saying. And it goes against, and honestly, your story leading up to now and how you just kind of didn't worry about anything. You just said, hey, New Yorker friends, I need people to give me some things out here. Thanks. I need to start a blog so I can go out here. And, you know, I mean, it's just like you never kind of thought in the back of your mind, ooh, this is cringy. Or and you accepted the newness of it and ran with it.
And I think, too, like, there are going to be some people out there that never get it and think it's cringe because they don't understand it, or they fear it because they don't understand it, or they judge it because they want it, but they don't know how to get it, you know? So it's like, there's always going to be that. But, you know, traditionally, the way that I believe about marketing is like, and branding is, it's a tool. And we can talk about what that tool is and what it is and what it isn't. But at the end of the day, if someone... I'm never going to worry about being sleazy, slimy, or salesy because that's just not who I am at my core.
Of course.
I am not a used car salesman. And yes, there are people out there that are that way. But I am not that way, so I don't have to worry about coming across that way because that's not who I am. You know, intentionality is really important when we're showing up online. If, you know, you got to ask yourself, why do I want to pick up this box called my iPhone and post something today? Why? Why do I want to share this photo? You know, why do I want to do this? And I think it's important, especially for artists. Like, you don't want to put a piece of your art out in the world and someone poo-poo on it. It's like you're having a baby and you're like, please don't tell me my baby's ugly. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's such a vulnerable, you know, it's such a vulnerable process taking something that you've created and like putting it out in the world just for people to freaking go to town on it, right? Yeah. But what we have to remember as creatives, and I think as artists, is that it's our job to create, and not even, it's our job to be the vessel of the creation, but it is not our responsibility or job, or really even any of our business as to how people respond to that. Because it's not ours anymore at that point. Yeah. And so, and I look at content creation the same way. You know, if I post a piece of content, whether I'm selling something, inspiring somebody, educating somebody, whatever it is, once it's out there, it's not mine. Like it's for the intention of why I put it out there in the first place. Okay. And so I think that kind of can help take the fear, because it's not really about the fear of being salesy. It's that deeper fear of, what are people going to think? Yeah. Am I going to be rejected? Yeah. Am I going to be found out? Are people going to think I'm a fraud?
Yeah, because the first time you get a comment that says, bro, that's amazing. You're like, yes.
Yeah. And then you get that one sucks. And you're like, damn. Did I delete? Yeah. And so it's like, those are very common human, like, core issues of like, am I worthy enough? Am I lovable? All of that, right? But when we get to the other side of that, at the end of the day, if you have a product and someone likes it, they're either going to buy it or they're not. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with you. It kind of reminds me of that Ariana Grande song, right? Like, I see it, I like it, I want it, I buy it. Yeah. I want it. I mean, that's really all it is. Yeah. And then marketing is just a tool to get that product, that service, that offer out in front of the buyer. And then the buyer gets to make the empowered decision on if they want to buy or not. It has nothing to do with us at that point.
But here's where I come into the equation where I have a problem. Not a problem, issues. Mm-hmm. It's obviously survival of the fittest, but like, you know, it's no longer sufficient or even sustainable to say, I'm a rad director. My work as a photographer is really good. It doesn't mean anything, because it has to get out.
Right.
And what that's causing is, like artists like me, photographers, directors, we now have to add a third element to our resume. Mm-hmm. And now we are a brand, a deal, an entity.
Yes.
And if we are only treating our as you said, genius, our art, and saying, here you go, artist or client.
Right.
You're going to be filled with a lot of down days. Mm-hmm. Not making money.
Right.
Because we now live in a world where everything is coming at us so fast and we have to feed these machines.
Right.
So does that affect art versus quantity? Mm-hmm. Or do the winners, or do the successful ones still keep it authentic and true to them, still produce your art and release it how you want?
Right.
But unless you are, and this is where I want to, now we're getting into it.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. What do we have to do?
Right.
Do I have to start a YouTube channel?
A blog, whatever.
A podcast.
Yes, yeah.
Do we and maybe you answered it. Yes, I mean you have an insanely successful podcast.
Well, I think it depends.
Yeah.
So, and this is where, and you know, my husband's an artist, so I know what it's like to live with one.
Yes. Well, Carrie
Yes.
wants to. We should have Carrie as a guest, you and her.
I know, but here's the thing that, you know, an art form, right? It's writers are writers because they write. Painters are painters because they paint. Musicians are musicians because they make music. Actors are actors because they act. That is a truth that is completely separate from, now, do I want to monetize that? Okay. Do I want to make money off that? Okay. Because there are a lot of people in the world that make money off their art, but there's also a lot of people in the world that don't. That they literally, they make money doing something completely different, and they paint every single day in their home, and for their own creative process, for their own connection to a divine calling greater than themselves. Okay. And it is never meant to be monetized. They may share it with friends and family. You know, maybe they put it in like an art thing, you know, at their child's school, but it is not this thing that they're going all in on as their primary basis of making a sustainable living.
Because I'm assuming you're about to say you need to draw that line in the sand. Because if you do want to,
then we're
you
going to
better cross that fence and go.
Right. We're going to have a very different conversation.
That's the conversation I want.
The first thing that you have to get clear on is, like, we are all creative beings. I don't care if you're an eye surgeon or if you're a painter. Okay. There is an art form to everything that someone that has specialized in what they do does. Okay. There's an art form to eye surgery. I hope there is, because if I ever need eye surgery, I hope that surgeon has an art form.
Sure,
right?
Or even like Carrie with lashes.
Exactly, lashes.
Yes.
There's an art form to that. There's a creative process to that.
Okay.
And she has a unique imprint in how she does it, different than how everybody else does it.
By the way, I'm obsessed. This whole podcast is because of the artist process. But keep going.
Okay. And if anyone needs to like go down that path for themselves, I highly recommend Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. It is a great book to dive into yourself as an artist. Elizabeth Gilbert's book, The Magic, I think it's called The Magic, where she talks about creativity and art and like how you should just create to create and don't worry about it being contingent on money.
Rick Rubin.
However, we live in a capitalistic society and we all have to make money and feed ourselves. So once you draw that line in the sand, and if you are someone listening that's like, yes, I want to make money, and what kind of money? Do you just side hustle money because you're going to be doing something else? Or like, no, I want to be a working actor. I want to be a working musician. I want to be able to sustain myself through my art form. If that is the case, then we have to have the kind of conversation that I have to have with my husband, which is, gone are the days where you can just be the artist, where you can just come in and say, but I'm the artist. I don't have to worry about my PR. I don't have to worry about
the adult in the room.
Right.
I'm the kid playing.
A magic advertising fairy is going to come down to the sky and handle this for me. And I'll tell you, Ryan, I spoke at a conference of photographers, 7,000 photographers. They hated me, annihilated me for what I'm about to say. So I may trigger some people listening,
Good.
And that is okay. And you do not have to agree with me.
Love it.
This is coming from someone who has created things. I have a best-selling book. I create content every day, but I also have a marketing brain. Sure. So with that to say, if you do not show up and advocate for your artistic genius, who the fuck else is gonna do it for you?
Agreed.
Because no one's coming to save you. I don't care if you're Picasso. No one came to save him. So,
Mic drop. Touche.
with that to say, it's actually a form of resistance. It is a form of control, and it is a way of, and I get the fear of when we are so terrified of being seen, right?
Yeah.
We put up these masks of like, well, I'm the artist. Let me throw in this excuse. Let me throw in that excuse. But you can't hide yourself and expect to be seen.
That's good.
You can't hide your work and expect it to be out
Because
there.
honestly, up until this podcast, all I would ever do on Instagram is post a dope photo, panic, and have anxiety about the caption.
Right.
Because that was the only part
And
that
get
was
lost
giving.
in it,
I was
which
giving that.
I can walk you through ways to like calm the nervous system throughout there and actually make it a very fun and creative process at the same time. So we'll get there. But I know this to be true because I have, I'm married to someone who has become more open to this now that he's been married to me for over a decade. But he comes from the old school of thought of like, no, the studio is going to hire me and then they're going to have these people that do that for me. And then I just get to focus on my craft.
Art, yeah.
Right. But it's like gone are the days of that. I even remember when I was majoring in journalism at the University of Tennessee, they were telling me, you have to know how to do it all. You just can't write. You have to know how to film. You have to know how to edit your B-roll. You have to know how to do everything. And I was like, huh? But that's the world in which we live in. And if we want to especially use social media to play the awareness and visibility game, we have to start embracing this idea that it is nobody else's job but your own to promote your art, to get it out there, to allow it to be seen so it actually creates the impact that it's meant to create in the first place. And the more that we can come to that, and then if you're lucky along the way and you get people that want to come on board to support you, great. But like you've got to drive that ship first and foremost. And so you have to flip that mindset around of like, well, I'm a special snowflake and I'm an artist and yes, you are a special snowflake and no one's coming to do this work for you. So like, if that is true, then why don't we just...
This is a jagged little pill I'm swallowing right now.
Why don't we just learn to do it?
You're talking to...
But I'm talking to a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there was such a visceral negative reaction to my message with that room full of photographers because they didn't want to hear the hard truth. Yeah. But it's also why the majority of that room, unfortunately, their work will never be seen on a mass scale. Yeah. They'll never be there's not going to be a longevity of a legacy. And so that's where like I love to get really, really clear on like what's the goal here? Like, are you just trying to like, and it's all relative and it's all amazing because we all need it, right?
Absolutely.
But it's like, do you just want a wedding photography business making $60,000 a year in Lincoln, Nebraska? Because if that's the case, cool. I now know the goal and this is what you need to do to make it happen. And that's not going to be as intensely strategic as, do you want to be, Annie Leibovitz? Because this is a whole other kit and caboodle, right? So the woman that wants to do wedding photography in Nebraska, that matters. That is important. She's got people to serve.
Absolutely.
But the end result is different, doesn't make it better. It's a different path than, no, I want to be known as one of the greatest photographers, wedding photographers in the entire world, period. It's a different vibe. So the first step to those listening is like, you got to get honest with yourself and you got to know what your goal is. Like, what is the goal that you like? What do you want to be known for?
Yeah. End goal.
End goal. What do you want to be known for? And the clarity in that is huge because then that's going to set you on the path. And then once you are clear about that, then we can go into like a brand. Like, what is a brand, right? Yeah. And how do we cultivate it? And I think the first thing that we have to get clear on is what a brand isn't. Because a brand is not a lot of the things that people think that it is. So for example,
I like that.
A brand is not a logo. A logo is a very efficient tool for a brand, but it's not the brand. A brand is not the product. It's not your photo. It's not your record. It's not your single. That's the product that you make, but it's not the brand. The brand is not a website. The brand is not any of those things. Brand simply equals reputation. It is the perception that people have of whatever it is that you throw out at them. And as long as that perception is mostly corralled to where you want it to be, then like, great, you're going to start building a strong brand. You're going to solidify. You're going to be intentional with the reputation that you're wanting people to have of you. The problem is people don't know what their goal is. They never get really clear on what their intention is. And so they start throwing out all kinds of things that aren't corralled to where they want it to be.
Yeah.
And then it gets really confusing. And if you confuse them, you will lose them. And so then they don't get the followers and they don't get, it's not popping off. And then they think, oh, something must be wrong with me or my art, or I must not be good enough. Where it's like, no, you haven't set the intention in course. The intention is the compass. It's going to put us on the path that we need to go. And if you don't have that clear first, then how can we then shape the reputation in the first place?
Like any business would do.
Yes.
You're no just because we have a
different.
camera, we
Right.
still have the insurances and all the attributes of a business. It's you as a creative really looking at yourself as a business.
Right. It just, the only thing that's different, and I'll put it in the case of like a musician, right? It's like Warner Brothers, your label used to be the business for you.
Yeah.
Now they're just a distribution arm. The Simon and Schuster for the authors, that used to be the business. They're now just the sales arm.
Sure.
For an actor, the studios used to be the business. Now they're just distributing the stuff. Like, it is your job to be the publicist, the marketer, the salesperson, the artist, the architect, the builder, everything.
And deal with it.
And deal with it and own it. And the second that you can start owning it, then like we can actually start to have fun with it. And that's the thing that like, then you get to do what you do best, which is be the creative genius that you are and start bringing creativity and artistic integrity into social media, that's the thing that I get so passionate about, because we've had so many people who haven't tapped in and tuned into their artistic genius that are like killing it on social media.
Yeah.
And really probably shouldn't be, but it's because the true artists that have tapped in and tuned in to their genius, they're not using it as a tool. And so you just see a bunch of people who just got better at marketing, so they're more seen, but it doesn't mean that their product, their service, or really what they're bringing to the table is quote unquote better than what somebody else may have.
Would you say then, is the algorithm in control? Are we all trying, do we even know what? I guess that's what you're saying is like you. Well,
the algorithm
is it a goalpost that's always changing?
It could be, but we have to remember the algorithm. It's machine learning.
Okay.
It takes what we consume, what we like. The algorithm is like, okay, Ryan Smith just spent 7.2 seconds on this photo, and he spent and that is 2 seconds longer than he spent on this other photo. So that's going to tell the machine that you like that person's content. So it's literally just going off of what we give it, whether we realize we're giving it that or not.
I asked a friend that last night, same question. He says, well, no, the consumer is.
Exactly.
We are.
It's literally machine learning.
Yeah.
The algorithm is AI that is learning from our consumption and buying behaviors on those platforms. That's it. The algorithm's not banning anybody. It's not hiding your content. Like, all that stuff is so silly, and we don't, it's like the algorithm's not some monster that's trying to like keep your content from being seen.
Okay.
It's like you just need to create content that is more intentional to your ideal audience.
Okay. Keep moving. We're going up the ladder here. So with all of that said,
right,
let's get into the next notch. Brand deals or brand partnerships.
Right.
I get DMs a lot from different obscure things asking X, Y, and Z to partner and stuff. And I don't believe, isn't there an entry level? Like, discuss a little bit about brand. Well, I got so much to talk about. The photographer, as we're talking about, the creative, the artist, do they need to start? looking at themselves as, I wouldn't use the word influencer, I guess. Is it better to look at themselves and how they can build their brand versus what they're servicing? You know, at some point, I go out and I do my job. I film Morgan Wallen. I go do whomever, and
Right.
I service the job.
Right.
Okay, cool. But I still need to address myself as a brand as well, right?
And so we know like brand equals reputation.
Okay.
So we got to first get clear on like, what is the reputation? Like, what do you want to be known for? So like that's always the first question that I ask anybody that works with me. What do you want to be known for? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Well, we need to think about it. The next question that people need to answer is, what do you specialize in? Because nobody wants to be a generalist. And I'll give you the example again. Like if I needed eye surgery, am I going to go to the local doctor down the street who also does knee exams? Or am I going to go to the eye specialist? Not only am I going to go to the eye specialist, but I'm going to pay top dollar for that because he commands that because he specializes in what he does. So I am also really big on specialization because it causes less confusion. And we also know like if you confuse them, you will lose them.
Would that be also considered a niche?
It could be. And that word niche has gotten kind of hijacked. And so niche is really just a subset of a group of people that you serve. So my niche is traditionally people who want to build online brands. That is my niche. My niche isn't my content type. My niche isn't my offers. My niche is just a subgroup of the people that I serve, that I show up for, that I create content for, that are my clients that buy from me.
Yep.
So that's what a niche is. So like your niche would be, high level, well-known musicians that need high level, highly produced, credible photography and videography. Like that's what they're hiring you for.
Sure.
And because you specialize and because you have a reputation for being one of the best in that, you get consistently called up and pitched and paid for those services.
Sure.
So everything that I'm saying, you've already done it in one aspect of your business. You just got to translate that over to social media.
I think that's so many of our issues.
Yeah.
It's not the talent and it's not that stuff. We've learned that over the years. It's this new thing. It's the social media. And for me, I'm no longer that's why I was so excited to have you, because I am no longer a creative that is kind of turning my back to it. I'm trying to understand it because I can answer you. I would like my photography to be seen. I want a gallery with a lot of my prints and people to come into Nashville and see it. I want to be a household name. I want to be considered for a top artist when they are doing something to go, oh, well, let's put him in the top 3.
Right.
So there we go. I mean, there's no mistake in what I've sacrificed and have done and to get to this point. It's so alarming.
Yes.
That the roadblock or the obstacle or the next thing that I have to hurdle over other than starting a podcast, starting my own production company. It's like, golly, now, like you said 20 minutes ago, you are going to be the architect. You are going to be the marketer. You are going to be
like, I'm a business artist. Like the art form of business, the art form of online branding, like that is my artistry. And so not only do I have to effectively articulate what that means to me, but I've got to articulate that through the mediums of podcasting, book writing, social media, whatever mediums I choose to make sure, because it doesn't matter if I know that. I got to make sure that you know that and you know that and she knows that. And that's when we have to start seeing social media as this tool. So let's just break it down. Let's say if you're in goal, one of your goals, right, is to have a gallery of your photos, right? Mm-hmm. So how we would have to start thinking about this is like, okay, so social media is going to be the awareness tool and the visibility tool that's going to drive exposure and interest in getting people to come to the gallery. Mm-hmm. So, a year before the gallery even launches, I'm going to want to start painting that picture on social media. I'm going to start letting people know that I'm a photographer, the type of photography that I do, Maybe I start to create some behind the scenes content to bring them into my process, to see how it happens, to see how it's done. Like I'm going to showcase the same thing the same intention that you would have for the gallery, you're going to have for the social media. The social media is going to be your gallery in the meantime. And you're going to start showcasing it out there. You're going to start sharing your story. You're going to start curating intentional content around the things that you're talking about. You don't just share the photo, but give me a story. Like, I'm looking at a photo behind you. Like, where were you? When was this? Why were these 3 people together? Why are they on motorcycles? Why this place and not the millions of other places that you could have shot this photo? What is the intention? What's the story of that photo? Yeah. Why the desert?
Well,
why did they want that?
I started that. That's what's interesting. I'm sitting here going, okay.
So you're starting,
check.
Right.
I did. I mean, we started doing 90-second clips where we talk about behind the stories of photos.
But you also have to let people know my intention is to bring these photos into a Nashville gallery soon. And so I'm wanting to bring you, my social media audience, into this process. The people that do this the best are the Kardashians. Kim Kardashian wanted to create Skims. So what did she do first? She started wearing this kind of stuff on social media and asking her audience, what do you guys think about this? Like when it comes to underwear, like what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What's hard about it? What do you wish? What kind of brands do you use? When it was makeup, do you like this lip liner? Do you like this color? What about the application of it? Like you have to
bring them in,
make them part of it. Because when people have skin in the game, when it's time for you to actually do a gallery viewing in Nashville, people are actually going to feel like they were part of the process of you. Yes.
Accord to it.
And this is what brings in the artistry of social media and the creativity of social media. It's all storytelling. And everybody listening to this, whether they're writers, you have to be a storyteller to be a photographer. You have to be a storyteller to be a writer. Yeah. You have to be a storyteller to be a director. There is no direction without storytelling. You have to be a storyteller to be a DP.
Yeah.
Like there's none of that without your artistic understanding of storytelling. That is all social media is. I'll give you another example. If I'm going to post a photo of my family, right? I've got 2 kids. Yep. You know my family. Yep. My brand is not my family. Mm-hmm. My brand is business, right?
Yep.
So I'm not just going to post a photo of my family. Oh, we're on vacation in Hawaii. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a story. And I'm going to post a series of photos in Hawaii on an Instagram story, path. And in this path, I'm going to take my viewers on a story and I'm going to talk about we're in Hawaii. And why we're in Hawaii is because I have set up a business that I can work from anywhere. And this is what I always used to want. I wanted the freedom to be able to pay to go on an amazing vacation, to take my family there without having to worry about the bills, without having to worry about expenses, without having to nickel and dime it, because I know that that's what my ideal buyer is telling themselves right now. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's what they want. So I am future pacing through storytelling where my ideal buyer or my ideal audience, where my ideal follower wants to be through my own story and transformation. I could do it through my own story and transformation. I could do it through another client's story and transformation. But I'm sharing through so I'm not just sharing a photo of my family.
Yeah.
I'm curating and creating the story and the brand, the reputation that I want them to think and feel about me, which is Julie's the kind of person that's going to help me create a business so I can go to Hawaii with my family and not have to worry about my finances.
And I can now
see how
back,
that's different.
Yeah, and now I can flash back to the young Julie doing a blog in LA and see how easy me to
right.
Okay, I love that, mm-hmm. But it means that you have to have constant intention. I was going to say, preparation.
Yes.
But intention is the word that you use, and I know that word.
And preparation's a great word too, because that's another thing to say. A lot of the stories that I post are not in real time because I need time to prepare the story. Okay. I'm not yesterday, 2 days ago, I was doing a VIP day with a client, right? And it was virtual. And instead of just pose, doing a Zoom photo of us being like on a VIP day.
Yeah.
I took people through the entire behind the scenes process of what happens, not what happened in her VIP day, but hey, this is so-and-so, just wrapped a VIP day with her. This is what happens during a VIP day. So I'm selling without selling. I'm soft selling all the time, but I'm doing it in a way that creates a story. It creates desire. It's solving specific problems that my ideal buyer has, which is why we have to know, like, what is the greater vision? What is the goal? What do we specialize in? What problem do we solve? And who the heck do we solve it for?
Mm-hmm. Now, would you say, back to the authenticity, like, we get told if you're shooting something, a friend of mine just said he was supposed to shoot an event of something, and he started to pull out his camera and put on the microphone and stuff like that.
Right.
And the publicist or whomever was like, what are you doing? I'm just getting it ready. I think it would look really cool while he's doing this, and this. It'll look really nice. So he's mic'd up and all that. No. Just use the iPhone. It's fine. It's just use the iPhone. And so he then was like, okay, well, now I'll just use the iPhone if that's what the client is wanting.
Right.
I guess in all of this, you are at the top tier. And, when you think of social media, you got to also look at it as there's some boneheads that are tainting the water or clouding the waters for guys who like me who come in tiptoeing, not walking on eggshells, but
your artistic integrity and your artistic expertise has to lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get to decide what tool you use, like what paintbrush you use to touch your canvas.
And I as I was asking that, and my first question that I even talked about early on was like, because of the algorithm, because of the feeding the machine, is art dead? No. And I think that's what I'm understanding from a lot of your posts and stuff is be authentic to what you have and keep putting out what you want to put out. If it's ready to go out, put it out. If it's not, don't do it.
Right.
Don't let.
When it's like, we can so you use Shure mics for podcasting. So do I, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to get a brand deal with Shure mic, you could create a story using video and audio about a day in the life of podcasting using Shure mics. But you're not just talking about, hey, I want to deal with Shure mics because that's what I use, but like, tell me the story. Like, why this tool, why this instrument? And not just about like, oh, because it's technologically, no, but it's like, no, I use this because I'm a storyteller and I want to create stories. And because of this tool, because of this paintbrush, I'm able to create strokes that are unique and different, that make my canvas and my painting unique and different than anyone else. And I want to make this tool a part of the greater storytelling process because I'm using it anyway.
Yep.
So it's like, sure, Mike, would you like to do a partnership? Because I can bring this into the conversation more through visual elements, through social media elements, through whatever that is.
And you would say reach out to them.
Yes. Make a list of every tool that you love to use that's in your toolbox based on your.
And don't be too humble to holler. No. That's how you're gonna. They're not going, hey, Spidey, let me just contact you.
That's
you
what
haven't
I did.
Yet.
When I was a mommy blogger, Ryan, I literally went into Camden's bathroom and looked around at the products that were in there and was like, I use Mustela shampoo, pitched Mustela, got a $20,000 deal with them. But I created story around it. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I use this and I've got 5,000 followers, hire me. They don't care about that. Like, what's in it for them? Mm-hmm. And someone like you, who you are so visually, you're an expert in visual elements. Like you could offer things to a brand that I never could because I can't produce visual elements the way that you can. Like, you're going to be able to give Shure visual content that they could then go and use to promote on their social media, on billboards if they wanted, like whatever they wanted to do. You're giving them it's called user generated content, UGC. You're a user of Shure. So by creating content for them, you're giving them UGC that they can use, that they don't have to pay some big advertising company in New York City $250,000 for. They'll just pay you $10,000 for it. See what I'm saying?
I do. the one of my final questions, not the final, but one of them is there's an element to what I'm hearing that has to, like me, I like to hide behind the camera. There's an element to all of this past hour that we've talked about, that if you do make that decision, like we talked about, to go and pursue and jump into social media, to build brand, to get brand partnership, scale your growth, your business, is you have to kind of see yourself. You have to put yourself out there in the sense of your face.
Right.
You can't hide.
Right.
And that's what Carrie says to me a lot. She's like, well, just get on your phone.
But
and
you
talk
can
to
still be
people.
a private person.
Okay.
Like, from at the end of the day, I'm actually a very private person. I don't talk about my family much on social media. Like I'm not, that's not the type of creator I am on social media. I have lots of friends that like literally their family life is their entire business. It's not me. Yeah. You can still be a very private, introverted, behind the camera person and still show up and showcase your work in a way that allows you to be seen, even if that physically means that your face is not being seen on everything that you create.
And you said in a way, let's just say that. In a way means you didn't learn all this at once.
No.
You didn't go to Hawaii or your vacation and plan out your story.
Right.
I got it. Like you had, and I say it all the time with this podcast, we built the plane midair.
Right.
The engine was getting plugged in and wings, I think that's super important for everyone to, when they jump into social media and to do this. It's not going to be perfect out of the gates. And you're not going to get the brand deals right out of the gates. You might get, hey, we'll give you 20%, whatever it is, whatever sale, I don't know,
Yeah.
Is there an entry fee when you get into brand deals? Yeah, you have to work with them and create that relationship as well.
Well, too, because they've got to know, like, there's something called an ROI.
Yep.
And they got to know, like, are you going to produce for us? Yeah. Like if we're going to send you tens of thousands of dollars of free equipment or give you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, we got to know what we're getting in return. So the thing that I always tell my students to do, especially if they're good at it, it's like, if you're good at video, like if you know how to set up a scene and like make something look like a freaking award-winning commercial, like do that for them. Be like, shoot it, post it, take us behind the scenes of how you set up your production studio, take us behind the scenes of, and don't just be cookie cutter about it. Share a story. Do the same kind of deck that you would do for a music video. Okay. From beginning to end. Of like, this is the story element. This is what, and this is your star of the show, right? I
understand what you're saying.
And then you could literally post that, on your socials, tag every tool. It may just be Shure, it may be a couple, and then slide into their DMs and be like, hey, I just created this. I've loved using your products. These are the type of interviews I do. These are the type of people that I interview. Are you ever interested in collaborating with, podcasters who are great visual storytellers? ? Yeah. Done. Okay, then on to the next brand. Then on to the next, then on to the next. You make a list of like 10 to 15 to 20 to 50 brands that you want to partner with that are true to you.
Yeah, of course.
Not just those random ones that DM you, but are truly like, if I could work a deal with Canon, like, yes, and take some time to show them what you're made of. And I always believe, like, I give away my best stuff for free, always. Like someone could literally just listen to my podcast, and they have. I've had people say, I have listened to your podcast for 7 years and grown a 6-figure business. And they may just always stay free fans. And that's great, because that's the whole intention of the podcast. I want to give away so much free, valuable content that someone thinks to themselves, man, if her free stuff is this good, I can't even imagine what she's like behind a paywall.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why wouldn't we want to start off that way? The first impression is everything. Again, brand equals reputation. So if you send them some killer, awesome, 30, 45, 60-second reel and just be like, hey, use it. It's yours.
Okay.
Take it. and just know, I just wanted to show you what I can do. I'm a massive fan. I do this consistently. I'm award winning, blah, blah, like talk yourself up. And I would love the opportunity to partner with you. Do you ever do collaborations? Show them what you're made of. Most people won't do that because most people are not that great. Most people trying to get into this brand deal game are not getting into it for the right reasons. They just want to be famous.
Oh.
But they actually don't have the artistic abilities because they haven't tapped into it yet. So that's what I always love for like my artists. You actually have a leg up that you don't realize.
Yeah, sounds like it.
You have a massive leg up, especially if you understand video and you understand audio and you understand design. You've got a massive leg up, far more than I ever did. I had to go the education route because I didn't have those artistic abilities.
Okay.
My artistic ability was in education.
I love that.
Yep.
Someone has asked me on the podcast, they were like, so before we started, so what's the podcast? You said education and they entertainment, and they
Right.
listed out,
Yeah.
what do you want it to be? And at first I didn't know, you know, and now I really do feel like, I don't know if this is a category, but I do, maybe it is education, because I love bringing people and showcasing and spotlighting them for a whole different demographic of people to learn about.
Yeah.
I guess that's education.
Yeah.
I genuinely want to hear your process.
Right.
And if the mics are recording properly, everybody else can hear it. You know what I mean? And those are all genuinely coming from in here. So it sounds like, honestly, with a lot of what you said, I'm kind of somewhat in the right area of it.
The pieces are already there.
Yeah.
It's just like and we all do this. We have to get out of our own way. We have to stop overcomplicating it. And we have to get to the root of like, you genuinely love to do that kind of stuff anyways.
Sure.
And they're going to feel that. Like, sure, Mike is going to feel that energy. They're going to see that energy. And they're also going to know, okay, he's actually really good at what he does. So, like, we should probably pay attention to this guy, right? You know?
I think Canon would be fun, because I've only shot every single photo in my entire life with Canon.
Yeah. And, you know, with these massive companies like that, it may take a couple of rounds.
Yeah.
Because, like, are we getting in front of them? Do we have the right contact? That's why I love, like, here's a little hack for you all. Like, sliding into the DMs are the best, because they can see it. Like, I always say, show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Like, show them. And then they're going to be able to direct you to a contact, or they're going to see it visually. And I love the idea of, like, let me just give you a taste.
Yeah.
Like, here, have this. It's yours.
One of your clips and this one of my favorites, because I actually do the same thing when I help educate or give advice to young folks. One of your clips, you know, about scaling your business, you know, treat it like you're nurturing a plant.
Right.
I'm big on that.
Yeah.
You don't overwater. You don't oversun. You plant, you let it grow, you love on it. You know, you do those things. I thought that was a very valuable piece of information. I kind of took validation from.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right. But you've already laid all that groundwork. So it's like, how are we taking, and going back to like my story that I shared, and that's why I wanted to like build this up to share that in the beginning. It's like, it was my years in PR and getting as big as I did there, right? Like, but I didn't have to be the best to be the only.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like I found my own little only unique thing, and then that led me to here, which led me to here, which led me to here.
And now you're one of the best.
And there we go.
And the podcast, I real quick before we go, the influencer podcast.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
I have been dropping an episode every Wednesday, if not more than that.
Yeah.
Never missed a week since April 24th, 2017. It's crazy.
And when did you see it start to blossom in your mind? Because what Joe Rogan said 5 years.
Yeah. So I wanted to create a podcast in 2016, but didn't pull the trigger, you know, kind of second guess myself and all that for probably about 9 months before I finally just said, I'll do it. And back then there wasn't a lot of marketing podcasts at all. And there was like 2 women doing it at the time. And then, you know, it really got some traction in 2018. We saw a lot of traction in 2019. And then when COVID hit, it was just, the whole podcast industry just opened up.
For sure.
And now it's more saturated than ever. And that's a great thing.
Okay.
Because with more saturation means more marketing dollars, more eyes, more consumers, more viewers, more listens, more plays. It also means you got to get really good at your craft and specialize in what it is that you do.
True.
But people always say, well, it's too saturated. I can't do that. And it's like, well, no one wants to be in a dying market.
Sure.
It's like, oh, let me go start a newspaper then.
Because this market sucks. Let's get in it.
Right. Like, wow, there's so many people that listen. There's so much money in this market. I don't want to be in that. It's like, walk down a bread aisle.
Yeah.
You want to be in a saturated market. And there's a place for everybody. You want to go where the visibility and the money and the conversions are. That's showing you the not just the trend, but the movement of where things are moving to. So highly recommend anyone that has the intention of sharing something. A podcast is a great medium. It's also kind of a lower barrier of entry for people. Sure. Definitely was for me when I started because it was audio only. It's a little bit more challenging for me now because I'm not a video expert. But there's whole production, their full-time jobs are just to help people produce podcasts. So, there's a way to make it happen.
One thing we did decide early on is we didn't want to do, it was a little bit of a hiccup for this podcast because I have a whole world of LA.
Yeah.
Crazy guests.
Yeah.
And when we first started, I guess we had the intention of Zooms. And
go out there, rent a studio.
Yeah, we decided that this isn't the podcast. Back to what you said.
Right.
You have to know what you want it to be.
Yes.
And I wanted this to feel more, in person and candid and real and authentic.
It's a different energy with in person.
And a Zoom would crush that. So yes, rent a studio for a week.
There's a ton of them out there. I've done it out there.
Oh, have you?
Yep, and it's great. It's just a different energy, different vibe.
Yeah, they're waiting. My guys, my guests are waiting out there. One last question. One last one is subscribers. While we're on the topic of podcasts, or even let's branch it into a YouTube-ish world. Brand deals and scaling that business. Does the subscribers allocate to getting brand deals? And if so, do you need to be offering special offers and getting people? In other words, what do I get if I subscribe?
Right.
Nothing different, or is it?
Yeah.
What do you say on that?
So I mean, you can. There's what dictates money for you? And I'll go first with podcasting. So it's not necessarily the subscribers; it's the plays and the listens. So the subscribers are important because that's what's going to, when someone subscribes to you, they get a notification whenever you drop a new episode. So the likelihood of them playing and listening to your episode and listening to it quick is higher, which means that supports the algorithm on the podcast platform. Okay. So it's not so much about if my episode has been downloaded, but how many plays did it get? How quickly did it get it from when I dropped the podcast, which is why a lot of people drop their podcast at 1 a.m. That way they can hit the European market. It's better to drop a podcast at, my podcast.
A podcast meaning a full episode?
Yes. So my episodes technically drop at 1 a.m. on a Wednesday. And we do that at 1 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. so we can get that Europe time. Earlier, right?
Noting that,
because the algorithm favors the faster someone starts to listen to your episode from the second that you dropped it, that tells the algorithm, oh, they're interested in this, and then also the length of time that someone listens to your episode. So it's actually better to drop one episode a week that is so extremely valuable that, let's say, someone listens to 75, 85, 100% of it. Versus dropping 3 episodes a week and they're only listening to 10% of it. Sure. So it's about quality over the quantity. The algorithm actually sees, even though they're listening to all 3, some people say, well, that's triple the listens. So that means, my numbers are going to go up and I'm going to get more ads and well, not really. What's better is to actually have an episode that's so freaking good that people listen to it 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
instead of having 4 episodes that people listen to once.
Okay.
So that's just some back end stuff with podcasting.
That's awesome.
Reviews don't matter with the algorithm at all. However, they're really important and great for like authority building and visibility. So like if you have a new listener, they're always going to go to your subscribers to see what are people saying. Like, is this worth my investment of time?
Wow.
So I always ask people to rate, review, and subscribe. So, because that helps.
Okay.
And then if you want to offer bonuses for subscribers, you can. You know, people do that.
For the longest time, I think I just started 3 episodes ago. We're on episode 23 or something.
Yeah.
And I just started
Perfect.
to start saying, hey, please, if you can, like and subscribe. And
share
I felt and
Share it with a friend.
I just felt like it was so cliche that I was I was watching
Well,
my
it
son's.
is because it works.
And you know who
because
said
everybody
that?
does it.
Carrie said
Yeah,
that.
it
She
is.
goes, Mr. Beast wouldn't be saying it if it didn't still work.
It's true. It is cliche because it works. Like we have to tell people what we want them to do. They're not mind readers.
Julie, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This was awesome, and honestly, I can't wait, and I hope all of my fans or followers or listeners they're gonna dive into this.
Me too, and I can't wait to see the reel that you make for all the brands that you want to work with.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
That was awesome.
Love you. Mwah.